When Monday attacks, the fluorescent lights buzzed like angry wasps above Melody Harper's desk at Wolf Innovations, casting everything in a sickly greenish glow that made everyone look slightly unwell. Melody hunched over her laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard with the speed of someone who had exactly 14 minutes of lunch break left and 3 hours until a critical presentation. Her auburn hair was twisted into something that vaguely resembled a bun, held together by a pen she'd borrowed from the supply closet. Her actual hair tie had snapped that morning. Just another Monday in corporate paradise. Melody's desk was organized chaos at its finest. Coffee rings decorated colorful sticky notes that framed her monitor, each one a reminder of impossible deadlines, ridiculous requests, and why she'd been Googling alternative careers at 3 in the morning. Her mug reading world's most average employee sat half empty next to Gerald, a succulent plant she'd miraculously kept alive for 3 months. The voice that changes everything, Harper. The voice sliced through the office noise like a knife through glass. Melody's shoulders tensed immediately, her fingers freezing mid-keystroke. She didn't need to look up to know who was approaching. The sound of Italian leather shoes on polished concrete was as familiar as her own. Heartbeat and twice as anxiety-inducing. Cameron. Wolf appeared at her cubicle like a storm cloud in a $3,000 suit. At 34, he was the youngest CEO in the company's history, having built Wolf Innovations into a tech giant that made even Silicon Valley veterans jealous. His dark hair was perfectly styled, steel gray eyes cutting, and his jaw looked like it had been carved by Renaissance masters. Melody forced herself to look up, hoping her face showed professional composure instead of the bone-deep exhaustion she actually felt. "Yes, Mr. Wolf." The impossible request, the Patterson report. "Where is it?" His voice was sharp, precise, with that particular tone of someone who never heard the word no and probably never would. Melody blinked. "The Patterson report you assigned this morning that requires 5 years of financial analysis and market forecasts. The one you said was due tomorrow evening?" Cameron's eyebrow raised slightly, a gesture that somehow conveyed both impatience and amusement. "I said I needed it today, by end of business." I twitched. She was absolutely certain he'd said tomorrow. She even had a sticky note somewhere with that reminder. But Cameron Wolf didn't admit mistakes. Arguing with him was like arguing with gravity, pointless, and likely to end with you falling. "Of course," she said, painting on a smile so bright it could power a small city. "Today? No problem whatsoever." Cameron studied her face as if trying to read between the lines of what she was desperately trying to hide. Under his gaze, Melody felt her neck flush. He had this way of looking at people like he could see straight through their professional masks and rehearsed phrases. It was terrifying and strangely captivating. "Good," he finally said, turning to leave. The expensive cologne and rapidly escalating panic he left behind hung in the air. As soon as his footsteps faded, Melody slowly sank face first onto her desk, forehead gently thumping against the surface. "Gerald," she whispered to her cactus. "Looks like Mommy's going to be updating her resume tonight." The dangerous Google search she straightened up, cracked her knuckles, and opened a new browser tab. Her fingers moved almost automatically, following muscle memory to that familiar address. The Google logo appeared, bright and cheerful, mockingly reflecting her professional desperation. Melody glanced quickly around the office. No one was watching. She leaned closer to the screen and typed, "How to quit without notice." Pause, delete. New attempt, "How to survive on ramen and spite." Delete, "How to make boss disappear legally." Delete, delete, definitely delete. Finally, she settled on, "How to fire my billionaire boss." The search results were hopelessly useless. The internet, apparently, hadn't yet figured out how a poor marketing coordinator could overthrow a tech mogul. Who would have thought? The next few minutes saw Melody diving deeper into the abyss of desperate searches. Signs your boss is a sociopath. How to know if you're having a nervous breakdown at work. Jobs where you don't have to talk to people. Each search was a small rebellion. A quiet, almost symbolic act of resistance against the absurd. standards that had become her every day. Reality, she was reading an article about becoming a lighthouse keeper somewhere on the edge of the world when her screen suddenly went black. Technology betrayal, Melody frowned, pressing the power button. Nothing. She checked the cord, wiggled the mouse, lightly tapped the monitor. The ancient ritual of computer magic. Technical difficulties, a voice said behind her. Melody jumped, spinning around. Cameron stood there again. How did he move so quietly in those expensive shoes? Had he taken lessons from professional ninjas? Nothing serious, she squeaked, her voice betraying her. Just a glitch. A restart will fix everything. Emma moved closer. That scent again, clean, masculine, entirely too pleasant to remember why she supposedly hated him. He leaned over her shoulder, his body warmth palpable, disturbingly close. Have you tried turning it off and on again? He asked, a hint of amusement in his voice. Melody felt something tighten low in her stomach. Completely inappropriate for the workplace. It was just about to, she mumbled. Feeling the fabric of his jacket brush her shoulder, he reached forward, his fingers almost touching hers, and held the power button, restarting the computer. The screen came alive, the fan word, and Melody held her breath. Please don't show browser history. Please no. Please, please no. But as always, the universe wasn't listening to Melody Harper's prayers. The moment of truth. Browser cheerfully restored her previous session, and there, in large letters like a death sentence, her last search blazed across the screen. How to fire my billionaire boss. Time froze. Blood drained from her face, then rushed back, painting her cheeks the lovely color of panic. She could hear Cameron breathing behind her. He was reading. He saw everything. This was it. Career over. Not with a bang or a scandal, but with a Google search that would surely become office legend. Melody slowly turned. Ready to meet her execution with whatever dignity remained, Cameron stared at the screen, his face unreadable. She opened her mouth to apologize, explain, beg for mercy, but didn't get the chance. Cameron Wolfe, billionaire and CEO, suddenly laughed, first quietly, barely audible. A short chuckle as if suppressed laughter broke through the cold armor. Melody stared at him, not believing her eyes. But the laughter grew, became warm, genuine, contagious. His perfect mask cracked, and underneath appeared something alive. Human. Melody's world tilted. The unexpected response, fire your billionaire boss, he said, wiping the corner of his eye. Bravo, Harper. Points for specificity. But tell me honestly, did you find anything useful? Melody helplessly opened her mouth, then closed it. This plot twist wasn't in any of her nightmares. He should have been angry, fired her, not laughing. It was just research, he suggested with a mischievous smile. Market analysis. Competitive intelligence. Stress relief. She blurted, immediately regretting it. I mean hypothetical stress relief. Not that I'm stressed. I love working here. Wolfe Innovations. Perfect place to slowly lose my mind. The last phrase escaped on its own, and Melody pressed her hand to her mouth. But Cameron didn't get angry. On the contrary, he laughed even louder. Slowly? He repeated with a raised eyebrow. Guess I need to speed up the process. Melody stared at him in confusion. This wasn't the Cameron Wolfe she knew. That one didn't joke, didn't smile, and certainly didn't laugh about employees Googling how to fire him. But right now, he was almost alive. I should probably explain, she said weakly. Please do, he responded, still smiling. I'm extremely interested in your research methodology. Melody took a deep breath, preparing for honesty. Sometimes when deadlines are impossible, the coffee machine's broken. My hair tie snapped, and Gerald looks judgmental. I occasionally hypothetically wonder what it would be like not working here, Gerald. Cameron asked. She nodded toward the succulent on her desk. He's too judgmental for a plant. Cameron looked at the drooping cactus, then back at her. A shadow of a smile flickered in his eyes. And all these hypothetical thoughts led you to Google? Google has answers for everything, Melody defended. Almost always. Though apparently, Nobody's figured out how to fire a billionaire boss yet. The internet is surprisingly useless on that topic. Tragic, Cameron agreed solemnly. What other careers were you considering? Melody felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. Better if you don't know? Try me. She threw him a glance, trying to understand if this was a trap, a new game, or if he was genuinely interested. He looked sincere, but she'd learned long ago that Cameron Wolfe couldn't be read like a normal person, she said carefully. There was the idea of becoming a lighthouse keeper. I even researched jobs in that field. Then professional dog walker and freelance food critic, though the option fell through. I once managed to burn water. You burned water? Don't ask. It's a talent. A different side. Cameron fell silent, studying her intently with those piercing gray eyes. Melody felt a slight unease rising inside. Under that gaze, it was hard to stay calm. Then, unexpectedly, he pulled up a chair and sat beside her desk. Tell me, he said quietly, what would it take for you to want to stay? Melody blinked. Stay here at Wolfe Innovations. What would make you stop looking for careers involving lighthouses and dogs? This question threw her off. She was ready for termination, not this. Are you serious? Completely. Melody looked around the office. Her desk buried in papers. Gerald the cactus, perpetually judging. The lights that made everyone look slightly green. I don't know. The work itself isn't so bad. It's just sometimes it feels impossible, she said honestly. The deadlines, the expectations, and you appearing suddenly like a business ninja. It's like working for an incredibly attractive tornado. Cameron's eyebrows rose. Incredibly attractive, you say? Melody's face flamed. I didn't say that. You definitely said that. Meant the metaphor was about unpredictability, not about you being. Melody covered her face with her hands. Can we pretend I didn't say that? Absolutely not, Cameron replied calmly, his voice ringing with a smile. This goes in my report notes. Employee considers boss an attractive tornado. I hate you, Melody mumbled without lifting her head. Oh, no. You don't, Cameron said with such confidence. It was simultaneously annoying and somehow comforting. Sometimes the job, maybe, but not me. Melody slightly parted her fingers, glancing at him. How do you know? Because people who truly hate me don't Google creative ways to fire me. They just leave. Maybe I'm just too poor to quit. Maybe, he agreed. Or maybe you just enjoy the challenge more than you're willing to admit. Melody lowered her hands and looked into his face. Today he seemed different, softer, calmer. Why aren't you firing me? For what? For having a sense of humor in a difficult situation. For the honesty with which you admit you're tired? Cameron shrugged. Besides, someone who thought to Google how to fire their billionaire boss is exactly the creative type we need here. You're insane, Melody said. But a smile appeared on her face. Possibly, Cameron nodded. I prefer the term eccentric billionaire. Sounds more mysterious. Melody laughed genuinely, as if remembering what laughter was. You're not what I expected. 8. Less human. Cameron's face grew thoughtful. I hear that a lot. It's easier for people when I'm just the cold, demanding boss. Simpler to deal with, but you're not just that. No, he said quietly. Not just that. For a moment, silence fell. The sounds of the office dissolved into the background as if they'd disappeared. Something changed between them. An invisible wall cracked. It was scary, exciting, and absolutely inappropriate for the workplace. So, Cameron finally said, about that Patterson report, reality returned like a slap. Right, the impossible deadline. What if I told you it's actually due tomorrow? Melody froze. What? You were right from the beginning. Due tomorrow, end of day. Melody felt a surge of triumph. Then why did you say today? Cameron looked slightly embarrassed. I wanted to see how you'd handle pressure. And because you looked like you needed a challenge. You were testing me? Melody's voice rose. You deliberately gave an impossible deadline just to see if I'd break. Yes, that's just insane. Eccentricity sounds better, he reminded her. Melody shook her head, a mixture of admiration and indignation flickering in her gaze. You're lucky I didn't quit. Are you kidding? Cameron stood, adjusting his jacket. After your search history, I'm never letting you go. You're too entertaining. He took a few steps toward the door, then turned back. Oh, Harper, next time you decide to Google how to fire me, use incognito mode. The IT department sees everything. Melody's face paled. Everything. Cameron's smile turned almost devilish. Absolutely everything. Sweet dreams. And he left, leaving her standing in complete shock. With a feeling of horror and something dangerously close to attraction, the digital exposures the rest of Melody's day passed in a state of panicked alertness, flinching every time someone from it walked past her desk. She'd always assumed her internet activity was private, protected by the anonymity of the corporate network. But now, the thought that somewhere in the depths of Wolf Innovation's servers existed a record of every desperate midnight search. Every weak moment, every how to tell if a coworker is plotting against you. Angry made her want to hide under her desk and never emerge. At 5 o'clock, the office began to empty. Only the workaholics chasing career peaks remained, along with those whose procrastination had earned them mandatory overtime. Melody fell into the second category. Instead of working on the Patterson report, she kept replaying her digital humiliation, wondering how Cameron had read her search history without flinching at queries like how to seduce your millionaire boss. Wait, had she actually searched that? Melody's stomach dropped as she remembered Tuesday night. After Cameron had complimented her presentation and she'd spent the entire evening reading hidden meanings into his words. God, she whispered, burying her face in her hands. I really did search that. The coffee delivery still working late, Harper? Melody jerked. Standing before her cubicle was Tyler Davidson from it, the guy who paired blazers with comic book t-shirts and considered energy drinks a complete food group. And suddenly, it hit her with icy clarity. This was the person who had access to her browser history. Just finishing up the Patterson report, she replied, her voice slightly trembling. You know how it goes. Deadlines. Tyler nodded understandingly. Oh, I know all about deadlines. Actually, I'm supposed to run a routine security check on all company computers tonight. Standard procedure. Melody felt her blood turn to ice. Security check. Yeah. Looking for suspicious activity, unusual search queries, that kind of thing. His face was expressionless, but something amused flickered in his eyes. Nothing to worry about if you haven't been searching for anything inappropriate. Melody laughed, or rather produced something more like a frightened cat's whimper. Of course not. Only work-related searches. Absolutely professional. Everything strictly business. Right, Tyler said, quickly tapping on his tablet. Though I have to say, I've seen everything over the years. People get incredibly creative when they think nobody's watching. Creative how? Melody heard herself ask, immediately regretting it. Tyler's smile became genuinely sinister. Well, like this one guy in accounting who spent 3 hours Googling how to fake his own death to avoid going to the corporate team-building retreat. Or someone in marketing who was interested in whether it's legal to put laxatives in the boss's coffee. Classic stuff. Melody relaxed slightly. Maybe her searches weren't so strange after all. Pretty relatable, she agreed. Exactly. Though I have to admit the search for how to fire the CEO is something new. Melody's smile vanished. You saw that? Harper, sweetheart, I see everything. It's literally my job. He leaned against her cubicle wall, clearly enjoying himself. But between us, that combined with searches like become a lighthouse keeper and professional dog walker career was hilarious. Some of the best entertainment I've had. Oh my God, Melody groaned, hiding her face. How many people know about this? Well, me, obviously. Security flags unusual searches too, and I may have mentioned it to Jenkins in accounting. We have a bet going about which department will have the first nervous breakdown this quarter. Melody looked up. A bet? Nothing personal, Tyler said quickly. Just an old office tradition. Though I have to say, searching fire my boss is pretty close to qualifying as a symptom. This is a nightmare, Melody mumbled. Could be worse, he said cheerfully. You could have searched how to seduce your millionaire boss. Now that would be awkward. Melody immediately flushed. She had searched exactly that. On Tuesday, after Cameron praised her presentation, and she spent the whole day looking for hidden subtext. "Yeah, that would be embarrassing," she whispered. Tyler stared at her face intently. His smile faded, eyes narrowing. "Wait, tell me you didn't?" Melody's silence said everything. "Oh my God, you did." Tyler nearly jumped with delight. "This is pure gold. Better than when Williams from HR accidentally printed a love letter on the office printer. Harper, do you even realize how boring my job usually is? It's all, did you try turning it off and on again? And no, you can't download that suspicious file, but this is real entertainment." "The protective boss, please don't tell anyone," Melody begged. This was a moment of weakness. Sleep deprivation, caffeine, temporary insanity. "Harper, this is gold. Pure gold. You actually searched for advice on how to seduce your billionaire CEO, who, by the way, could fire you with a snap of his fingers." Before Melody could respond, the elevator chimed, announcing someone's arrival on the floor. They both turned to see Cameron Wolfe stepping out, still looking impeccable despite the late hour. His jacket and tie were gone, shirt sleeves rolled up, and Melody allowed herself a second to note how the evening light played beautifully in his dark hair. "Davidson," Cameron nodded. "Running the security check?" "Just finished, sir," Tyler replied, quickly pocketing his tablet. "Everything's clean. No suspicious activity detected." Cameron's gaze shifted to Melody, who was trying to dissolve into her cubicle wall through sheer willpower. "And Harper's computer?" "Completely clean," Tyler said smoothly, and Melody looked at him in surprise. "Standard work searches? Nothing flagged." Something passed between the two men, an unspoken understanding that Melody couldn't quite decipher. "Good," Cameron said. "Thanks for staying late, Davidson. You can head home." "Sure thing, Mr. Wolfe. Have a good evening."
Tyler
Shot Melody a knowing wink before disappearing toward the stairwell. Leaving her alone with Cameron in the nearly empty office, the truth revealed he knows. Melody said flatly once Tyler was out of earshot. "He knows everything." "He does," Cameron confirmed, approaching her desk. "Tyler knows most things that happen in this building. It's his job, and he just told you he found nothing suspicious?" "Because I asked him not to include your search history in the security report." "You what?" Cameron leaned against her cubicle wall, arms crossed. "I called him about an hour ago. Said something about appreciating unconventional problem-solving approaches and not wanting to stifle creative thinking. Tyler's words suddenly made sense. He said you valued my perspective. I thought he was making it up." "Scout's honor," Cameron said, raising 3 fingers. "Though I was kicked out of Scouts for teaching kids how to hack the school's audio system, so maybe that doesn't count." Melody stared at him. "You did all that? Protected my search history?" "I did." "Why?" Cameron was quiet for a moment, his expression growing serious. "Because everyone needs a way to blow off steam. And honestly, Harper, I prefer employees who can speak their minds. Even if it's a bit cheeky, over those who bottle everything up until they explode. Even if those vents include searching for ways to overthrow you." "Especially then," Cameron said with a slight smile. "That shows initiative." The 7-restaurant dinner before Melody could respond. Her stomach growled loudly in the quiet office, a sound so pronounced it echoed off the glass walls. Cameron's smile widened. "When's the last time you ate? Lunch? Around noon, maybe?" "Maybe." "I had half a protein bar and 3 coffees. That counts." "That absolutely does not count." Cameron pulled out his phone. "Come to my office. I have a proposition for you." "A proposition?" Melody's voice came out higher than intended, her mind immediately jumping to inappropriate places. "A business proposition," he clarified, though his eyes sparkled with amusement. "Though given your search history, I understand why you might interpret that differently." Melody's face burned. "Can we please never mention my search history again?" "Absolutely not. It's the most entertaining thing that's happened to me in years." He gestured toward his office. "Come on, the food's getting cold. What food?" Instead of answering, Cameron simply walked toward his office. leaving Melody to grab her things and follow. Gerald the cactus tucked under her arm per Cameron's earlier bizarre email request. When she entered his office, she stopped dead in her tracks and burst out laughing. The botanical intervention. Cameron's normally pristine office had been transformed into something resembling a botanical consultation center. A powerful grow light stood in the corner. Various fertilizers were neatly arranged on the coffee table, and something that looked like a hygrometer sat next to his computer monitor. Cameron himself stood behind his desk in his expensive suit with reading glasses perched on his nose, intently studying what appeared to be a comprehensive plant care guide. "Did you buy out a garden center?" Melody asked, setting Gerald on the desk next to the hygrometer. "I may have done some research," Cameron admitted, looking slightly embarrassed but pleased with himself. "Apparently, succulents require specific lighting and watering conditions. Gerald's been living under office fluorescent lights and getting your attention between deadlines. I thought he deserved better." Melody felt something warm and fluttery expand in her chest. "You researched plant care for Gerald?" "I researched it for you," Cameron corrected, stepping closer so she could smell that familiar, expensive cologne and something uniquely him. Gerald just happened to benefit. Melody looked at the entire setup, at Cameron's sincere face, at Gerald sitting proudly among his new accessories, and felt her heart melt completely. "This is absolutely insane." "I prefer the word thorough," Cameron said, with that light touch of irony, continuing their running joke. "Besides, if I'm already stealing your evenings under the guise of business dinners, I should at least make sure your plant doesn't suffer from my selfishness." Cameron, Melody said softly. I could take Gerald home if he needed special care, right? You didn't have to turn your office into a botanical garden." "I know," he replied, placing his hands on her waist. "But I wanted to. Wanted Gerald to be comfortable here, because I'm hoping you'll both be spending a lot more time in this office." The corporate espionage. Melody's heart raced. More time? Before Cameron could answer, his phone buzzed urgently on the desk. He frowned, checking the screen, and his expression darkened. "Security alert. Someone else is in the building? Cleaning crew?" Melody suggested, glancing at her watch. It was nearly 9 o'clock. They don't come until after 11. Cameron pulled up the security camera feed on his computer. "This is someone else." Melody watched as he scrolled through different cameras, his face growing increasingly concerned. "There," he said, pointing at the screen where a familiar silhouette moved through the office. "That's Tyler. What's he doing back here?" Tyler moved purposefully through the office, carrying his laptop bag, heading straight for the server room. "Is that normal?" Melody felt a strange chill of worry. "Oh, not at all. Maintenance is always scheduled in advance, and I didn't approve anything for tonight." As they watched, Tyler stopped at Melody's desk. He set down his bag, pulled out a tablet, and began connecting it to her computer. "What's he doing?" Melody whispered, leaning closer to the screen. Cameron's face turned to stone. The softness disappeared, replaced by cold determination. The executive awakened, accustomed to responding to threats. "He's doing something he shouldn't be doing," he said quietly, already heading for the door. "Stay here." "Like hell," Melody snapped, following him. "That's my computer. He's messing with my files." "Melody, if Tyler's doing what I think he's doing, this could be dangerous." "All the more reason you're not going alone," she said firmly. "I want to know why he was so interested in my search history." The confrontation. Cameron paused at the elevator, studying her face. "You think this is connected to yesterday?" "Tyler was way too interested in my online activity and knew about office gossip more than any IT guy should," Melody said, her thoughts racing, puzzle pieces falling into a disturbing picture. What if he wasn't just running a security check, but looking for something specific? Something he could be paid for, Cameron finished grimly. The elevator ride felt endless. The air between them crackled with tension. If Tyler was really downloading data from her computer, someone thought she had access to information worth committing corporate espionage for. But what could an ordinary marketing coordinator know? Unless it wasn't about what she knew, but who she'd been spending time with. "Cameron," Melody said quietly as the elevator doors opened. "What if this isn't about my work? What if someone's using my computer to get to you? Cameron's jaw clenched. That's exactly what I'm afraid of. They moved carefully through the dark office, hiding behind cubicle walls. Near Melody's desk, Tyler was still working, completely absorbed in the process. Now they could see cables running from his tablet to the computer. With lines of code streaming across the screen, he's downloading everything, Cameron whispered, barely containing his rage. Melody felt exposed, as if someone had invaded her personal space. The computer held more than just work files, personal documents, photos, correspondence. The thought of Tyler rifling through her life made her feel sick and scared. What do we do? She breathed. Call security? Before Cameron could answer, Tyler looked up. For a second, everyone froze as if time had stopped. Then Tyler's expression changed. Instead of fear, cold, calculating calm appeared. He didn't look like someone caught off guard, or rather someone whose plans had only slightly shifted. The reveal, Mr. Wolf, Tyler said calmly, continuing to work on his tablet. Didn't expect to see you this late, Tyler, Cameron said, his voice full of authority. Step away from the computer. Afraid I can't do that, sir. I'm in the middle of a very important data transfer. Unauthorized data transfer, Cameron corrected, moving closer from a personal employee workstation. That's corporate espionage, Tyler. That's a federal crime. Tyler smirked, predatory, without a hint of friendliness. Corporate espionage is such an ugly term. I prefer competitive intelligence gathering. Besides, the data isn't for competitors. An icy lump formed in Melody's chest. Then who's it for? Tyler looked at her with a shadow of pity. People who are very interested in Mr. Wolf's personal correspondence, especially messages that might suggest inappropriate relationships with subordinates. The words hit Melody like a slap. Someone was trying to collect evidence of her connection with Cameron to damage his reputation or blackmail him. The thought that their personal moments would be turned into dirty headlines was unbearable. Who hired you? Cameron asked coldly. People with deeper pockets than yours. Believe it or not, Tyler answered, frowning at his tablet, though this is taking longer than expected. Ms. Harper, you should use more complex passwords. Gerald 23 can be cracked with your eyes closed. Melody felt her face burn with shame and anger. You've been digging through my personal files? Just the work ones. Though I must admit, your Google search history is way more interesting than I expected, Tyler smiled mockingly. My employers are particularly interested in the timeline. When exactly you started searching for ways to seduce your boss versus ways to fire him. Melody's power move Cameron moved so fast, Melody barely registered it. One moment Tyler was smirking at his tablet. The next, Cameron had him pressed against the wall with such force, the air seemed to freeze. You have 10 seconds to name your clients, Cameron said calmly, but with iron determination. After that, I'm calling security and the FBI. Can't prove anything. This is just routine maintenance. The security cameras say otherwise, Cameron replied coldly. As does the tablet with stolen data in your possession. So I'll repeat. Who hired you? But before Tyler could answer, the quiet chime of the elevator echoed through the empty office. Multiple footsteps rang out, heading straight toward them. Expecting guests? Tyler asked with a smirk, regaining his confidence. Cameron's expression darkened as he realized the situation. Melody, get behind me. What? Now, without argument, she pressed against his back, heart pounding wildly. She felt the tension in his muscles, heard him breathing deeply and evenly, preparing for whatever was about to happen. 3 men in expensive suits emerged from behind the partitions. Moving with the predatory grace of those accustomed to solving problems quickly and permanently, Mr. Wolf, the leader, began politely. Sorry for the intrusion, but we need to discuss certain business matters with you. Business matters that required breaking into my building and stealing my employees' data. Cameron didn't move from his protective position in front of Melody. Business matters requiring certain information not to become public, the man calmly clarified. Information that could be devastating for certain parties. Melody's insides twisted. The puzzle pieces suddenly assembled into a horrifyingly clear picture. Someone didn't just want to damage Cameron's reputation. They needed leverage over him, a tool to control his decisions. And somehow, she'd become that tool. The office where she'd spent half her life now felt cramped and alien. The three men filled the space with cold, threatening energy. Melody pressed closer to Cameron, his presence the only thing that felt real and secure. "Let me guess," Cameron said, his voice calm, though the calm held the tension of an arrow before release. "Nathaniel Cross sent you." The leader smiled preterily, without a trace of friendliness. "Mr. Cross is a businessman, Mr. Wolf. He understands the value of information, especially concerning his competitors' personal lives." At the mention of Cross's name, Cameron's muscles tensed. "What does he want?" "Simply for you to reconsider your position on the Brightwell Industries deal. A more cooperative approach would benefit everyone." "And if I refuse?" The man's gaze slid to Melody, cold, disturbingly direct. "Then certain information about your relationship with Miss Harper might accidentally reach the press. Information capable of irreparable damage to your reputation and her career." Melody felt everything inside flip. She knew she'd entered dangerous territory, but never imagined their feelings would become weapons. The idea of their private moments becoming tabloid fodder was unbearable. "You're assuming there's something to find," Cameron said without flinching.
Oh.
"We know there is," Tyler interjected, still held by Cameron against the wall. "Today's surveillance footage is already a masterpiece. Dinner by candlelight, wine, a kiss, the works." Melody's cheeks flamed with humiliation and rage. They'd been watched, filmed, their feelings turned into a pressure tool. "What do you want?" she asked, surprised at how steady her voice sounded. The leader narrowed his eyes slightly. Pleased she'd spoken. "We simply want Mr. Wolf to show good judgment. The Brightwell Industries deal is worth billions to Cross Enterprises. Surely his personal happiness is worth more than aggressive negotiating tactics. You want me to throw the deal?" Cameron said coldly. "We want cooperation," the man said in an almost friendly tone. "Share the profits, not the market. Miss Harper seems like a charming woman. It would be a shame if her career collapsed over a misunderstanding that could be prevented." Something inside Melody snapped like ice becoming steel. They thought she was the weak link. They were wrong. "The recording, actually," Melody said, stepping out from behind Cameron, despite his warning gesture. "I have a better idea." "Melody," Cameron said quietly, almost pleadingly. "Don't." "I have to," she said firmly, looking straight into the leader's eyes. "You think I'm a helpless victim, needing protection? Then you didn't read my file very well." A shadow of uncertainty flickered across the man's face. "Miss Harper, I don't think you fully understand the situation." "I understand perfectly," she replied calmly. "You want to blackmail Cameron using our relationship? You think threatening my career will make him comply?" Her smile became cold as a glass shard. "But you miscalculated because I don't care." "Melody," Cameron started, but she raised her hand. "Let me finish." Her voice was quiet but powerful. "Want to publish the video? Publish it. Want to tell the world Cameron Wolf is dating his employee? Tell them. Want to destroy my career? Try. But you're making one fatal mistake. And what's that?" the leader asked, confidence beginning to leave his eyes. "You think only he has power?" Melody pulled out her phone, fingers quickly dancing across the screen. "But you don't even suspect I've been recording everything. Every threat, every admission of industrial espionage, every hint at your blackmail." She turned the screen toward them. The active recording icon glowed brightly. "This conversation is already uploading to the cloud automatically, with copies going right now to the FBI, the Securities Commission, and oh yes, 6 journalists I personally know." Heavy, cutting silence filled the room. And this time, for the first time all evening, the fear wasn't on her side. The men exchanged worried glances. "You're bluffing," the leader said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Am I?" Melody's smile widened. "Want to test that theory? By the way, I studied journalism before coming to marketing. I know how to collect evidence and who to give it to for maximum impact." Cameron looked at her with admiration. "Melody, you're brilliant and simultaneously terrifying." "Besides," Melody continued, addressing the leader, "you made another critical mistake." "What's that?" "You assumed Cameron would choose his business interests over me. But I already Googled how to fire my billionaire boss, and decided I'd rather keep him. You really think a couple of corporate threats will make me back down? Tyler started reaching for his tablet, probably to delete the stolen data. But Cameron was faster. With one smooth motion, he grabbed the device and smashed it on the floor, scattering expensive tech pieces across the carpet. "Oops," Cameron said calmly. "Clumsy of me." The backup arrives. The leader's composure finally cracked. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. Cross Enterprises has resources you can't even dream of." "Funny thing about resources," Melody said calmly. "They're only useful if you can use them without risking prison. And thanks to this recording, any move Cross makes against us becomes evidence of retaliation for refusing blackmail. You think you're clever?" The man growled. Before he could finish, the sound of sirens filled the air, approaching with each passing second. Tyler, for the first time all evening, looked genuinely frightened. "Funny thing about security systems," Cameron said with satisfaction. "They automatically call the police when there's a break-in attempt. I'd say they'll be here in about a minute." The three men exchanged glances, clearly deciding whether they could complete their mission and escape before police arrived. Melody saw them reach their conclusion. The risk was too great. "This isn't over," the leader warned, backing toward the stairwell. "Actually it is," Melody called after them, "because I'm a journalist at heart, and I never forget a good story. Cross Enterprises just became my new investigation topic." The men disappeared into the stairwell just as the elevator doors opened and security guards rushed in along with two uniformed police officers. The aftermath. Cameron immediately switched into crisis management mode, calmly explaining the situation while Melody stood beside him, still clutching her phone and trying to process what had just happened. "Miss," one of the officers said, approaching Melody, "we'll need your statement about tonight's events." "Of course," she replied, looking at Cameron. "Though I should confess, I don't actually know 6 journalists. I was embellishing a bit there." Cameron laughed, warm and relieved. "Melody Harper, when you're angry, you're genuinely terrifying." "I prefer the term effectively motivated," Melody smiled, as police took statements and Tyler was led away in handcuffs. Melody thought about all her internet searches, the possible career paths, the ways to escape the complexity of working with Cameron Wolfe. She never imagined that, instead of running away, she'd end up facing every problem head-on with a phone in hand and a healthy dose of righteous anger. New understanding. So Cameron said when they were finally alone in his office after the police investigation concluded, "How do you feel about dating someone whose business competitors sometimes resort to corporate blackmail and espionage?" Melody considered seriously. "Well, it's at least way more interesting than being a lighthouse keeper." "That's not an answer." Melody moved closer, almost touching his shoulder. In Cameron's gray eyes, she saw worry and tension that hadn't disappeared even after their victory tonight. "Cameron, someone just tried to use me to get to you. And my first reaction wasn't to run, but to fight." "What do you think that means?" "That you're far braver than I deserve," he answered softly. "It means I'm exactly where I want to be," she corrected. "With all the risks, including my dangerous billionaire boss." Cameron's smile was slow, warm, promising. "In that case, Melody Harper, are you ready to continue this relationship despite the potential professional risks?" "I thought you'd never ask," Melody said, reaching up to kiss him. Outside the windows, city lights blazed, but Melody barely noticed them. Her thoughts swirled around one thing. She'd finally found something better than all her internet searches. A person beside whom she didn't want to search for escape routes, but wanted to build plans bold. Real, shared ones. 3 weeks later, 3 weeks had passed since that night. The office had returned to normal rhythms, though now everyone knew about the attempted corporate espionage. Tyler's arrest had made headlines, and the subsequent FBI investigation revealed he'd been working for Cross Enterprises, attempting to sabotage the Brightwell deal. Now, after law enforcement intervention, Wolfe Innovations had emerged victorious. Melody sat at her desk trying to focus on quarterly reports, but her gaze kept drifting to Cameron's office. The glass walls that once intimidated her now seemed like windows to new possibilities, especially when he looked up and caught her eye, smiling in a way that made her lose all words. Their relationship had become something surprisingly delicate and fragile. During the day, they maintained strict professional distance with discipline worthy of military regulations. Cameron remained the demanding CEO, striving for perfection, while Melody was the resourceful marketing coordinator, solving problems with a dash of daring and creativity. But after work, when the office emptied and city lights ignited, they became different people, those who'd found something rare and real in each other. Office speculation, earth to Melody, came the voice of Jennifer from HR, appearing beside her desk with a knowing smile. "You've been staring at that report for 10 minutes without typing a single number." Melody blinked, returning to the screen where an unfinished spreadsheet waited. "Sorry, just thinking about the figures." "Yeah, sure," Jennifer drawled. "Very interesting figures, apparently. In a Brioni suit with an office on the top floor." Melody felt her cheeks flush. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Of course not," Jennifer replied with fake innocence. "That's exactly why you've been humming Disney songs and stopped drinking coffee by the gallon. Because someone now regularly leaves you fancy lattes." "That could be anyone," Melody weakly protested. "Sure. Anyone who knows you prefer cinnamon over vanilla and uses corporate delivery from the most expensive cafe across the street." Jennifer smirked. "Harper, you need to work on your poker face." Before Melody could respond, her computer chimed softly. New email. The sender made her heart skip. Cameron Wolf at wolfinnovations.com. Subject line looked innocent. Budget meeting 6:00 p.m. Melody opened the message and barely suppressed a smile. "Dear Miss Harper, please bring the Patterson forecasts to my office at 6 p.m. for discussion. Additionally, I may have accidentally ordered food for 6 people again. Would be ashamed if it all went to waste. Regards, C. Wolf. P.S. Gerald looks thirsty. Perhaps you should water him." Melody glanced at her cactus, which indeed looked slightly wilted, then returned to the screen. Over 3 weeks, she'd learned that Cameron was masterful at hiding personal messages within professional emails, like some spy novel hero. "Let me guess," Jennifer peeked over her shoulder without any remorse. "A sudden important meeting that somehow coincides with dinner time." "It's a work meeting," Melody replied with practiced calm. "Of course, just like all your work meetings after 7 p.m., Jennifer chuckled, but then grew serious. "Listen, I like you too, so here's free advice. Melody mentally prepared for a lecture. "Everything you're doing right. The office is full of gossip, but none of it's confirmed. Even the biggest rumor mongers can't find proof." Melody's eyebrows rose in surprise. "Really?" "Though," Jennifer added, "tell Mr. Wolf that ordering coffee for specific employees isn't the stealthiest strategy. The new IT person is already asking questions about delivery logs. The promotion offer at exactly 6:00. Melody knocked on Cameron's office door, carrying Gerald under her arm and a folder with Patterson forecasts. What she saw made her stop and laugh out loud. Cameron's normally pristine office had been transformed again, this time featuring not just Gerald's botanical setup, but an elaborate dinner spread from multiple restaurants. The aromas of Thai cuisine, Italian herbs, and something suspiciously resembling barbecue mixed into an intoxicating cocktail. "You actually ordered dinner from 6 restaurants again?" Melody asked, setting Gerald among his growing collection of plant care accessories. 7. If we're being precise. "The sushi is running late," Cameron said, looking slightly embarrassed but pleased with himself. Right on cue. There was a knock at the door, and a delivery person appeared with a bag from Sakura. The elite Japanese restaurant downtown, Melody watched as Cameron left generous tips and added the sushi to the already generous feast. "This is insane," she breathed, though she was smiling. "I prefer the word thorough," Cameron said with that light touch of irony that had become their private joke. "I just wanted to make sure you'd find something you liked." "Cameron," she said quietly, using his first name. "You didn't have to do all this." "I know," he replied calmly, meeting her gaze. "But I wanted to." That simple honesty was something that squeezed her chest, something dangerously close to love. The real conversation. "So what's the actual project?" Melody asked, trying to regain control of the situation. Cameron tilted his head slightly, a mischievous smile appearing on his lips. I need you to help me understand what makes Melody Harper tick. What she likes, what she dreams about, what makes her Google alternative careers at 3 in the morning. Consider it market research. Market research for what? For ways to convince you to stop searching for reasons to fire me and start looking for reasons to stay.
Oh,
In his gaze was something that instantly made her understand. This wasn't about employee retention. This was about him, about her, about them. That's a pretty ambitious project, she managed to say. I'm an ambitious person, he replied, and I have excellent motivation to succeed, which is. Cameron stepped closer, close enough for her to catch the scent of his cologne clean, subtly masculine, somehow comforting. I realized I really enjoy making you laugh. And I'd like to continue, if you don't mind. Melody's heart pounded so loudly it seemed to echo in the room. The professional questioned Cameron. I know this is complicated, he said quickly, as if sensing her doubts. I understand all the rules about workplace relationships, about power dynamics, and all those sensible reasons why this is a bad idea. But I can't stop thinking about you since yesterday, and I'm hoping that means something. Melody stared at him, trying to process what she'd heard. You've been thinking about me constantly? Constantly, Cameron admitted with a wry smile. It's very distracting. I almost agreed to buy a llama farm during the board meeting because I was thinking about what you'd say about it. A llama farm? They say it's quite profitable, and I thought you'd find it amusing. Melody burst out laughing, the tension popping like a bubble. You considered buying a llama farm to make me laugh? In my defense, it was a small farm. More of a hobby llama situation, Cameron said with dignity, though his eyes sparkled with laughter. And you have good taste. I trust your judgment on llamas. I've never expressed an opinion about llamas, Melody objected. Not yet, he replied, but I'm hoping to hear your thoughts on the matter. She shook her head, smiling helplessly. This conversation had become completely surreal. Excellent, Cameron said, taking her hand. I was aiming for surreal. Surrealism is better than boring business talk. His fingers intertwined with hers, warm and confident, and Melody felt something shift between them. This was no longer just flirting, not just a fun distraction from office monotony. This was real, scary, and beautiful all at once. So, Cameron said, his thumb gently tracing her knuckles, will you help me with the market research? I promise excellent food and stories about my business failures as a reward. She looked into his gray eyes, seeing warmth, humor, and something deeper that made her heart race with excitement. She remembered all her internet searches, all the career alternatives, all the ways to escape Wolf Innovation's impossible demands.